morning, world. This is Steve Ralph, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live from North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the United States of America. And today, of course, I'm just going to start opening up with North Carolina. Real quickly, I'm just going to go through on World Edition just things going around in the world, and we'll open up with more monologues on world politics tonight at 5 o'clock. But today, my thoughts are about the government shutdown and where we are in American politics. How can it be that in the oldest democracy in the world, the leader of the free world, that our government cannot come together to continue to fund a government? Although politicians vouch that they're abiding by their principles and not backing a government completely funded, uh, I think it shows weakness in a nation when cannot put aside our personal differences. And today we're going to have a shutdown, probably tomorrow, where congressmen and senators will continue to receive a salary, employees will be furloughed, healthcare benefits and veteran benefits and all those things could stop for a while, and the country will be on standstill while other nations are marching on for progress and opportunity. I think much of the world is really wondering what is going on in the United States. And I think politics has really reached an all-time low in our country. So we'll be talking a little bit about that is, how could this be in this land of opportunity that we cannot pass a budget? So will the government shut down or not? We'll know more about tomorrow. Now, with that being said, some of the things we'll talk about briefly today are the presidential debate. Ron DeSantis came swinging on missing in action at the party's debate, skipping the ill-tempered slang match, and spoke at a non-union car factory in Detroit. He plugged his populist economic message, and but the bottom line is Ron DeSantis was did pretty well. Nikki Haley came out swinging, almost emerging in second place, and so we'll see. But none of the candidates really made that much headway. So still, Trump is the nominee of the potential prospective nominee of the Republican Party. At the end of the day, we're just going to talk about that of where we are in American politics. Will Donald Trump be president again? He's now in a dead heat with Joe Biden in the polls, and we will see what will happen. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The other news in the world, the Armenian government of Nagorno-Karabakh said it would dissolve itself by January 2024. The price of Brent crude oil, the global benchmark, surged to 97.56 a barrel. And, of course, Taiwan unveiled its first locally made submarine, built at the first more than $1.6 billion. Amazing that countries like that are investing in these kinds of things. So I'm going to be here for 30 minutes. Let's get started. I'm going to be kind of here, navigating this. So we got Lee Newton Rhodes, Jatori McDuffie. I think we're going to spend a little bit of time on the show rather than going issue to issue like we're going to go politics. Let's just dive in real quick to the presidential debate. And if you guys watched it and what your thoughts were, we'll start with Nick and then move over to
Unfortunately, I didn't watch the debates because the big man was not in the room. I'm not talking about Joe Biden. I'm talking about Donald Trump. And as long as he leads all the other candidates combined, percentage-wise, why watch all the little minnows when the big fish is in the room? Now, what I did do, Steve, which I'll bring up on World Politics, but since I have the platform, I can do it now, is I read the decision, the fraud decision that the judge rendered against Trump. Now, let's set the basis for this fraud decision. Number one, it was brought by a district attorney who was a Democrat. Number two, the judge who sat making the decision was a Democrat. Number three, the jury didn't get to make a decision because he issued what they call a summary judgment. By the way, if you follow the trend in the law, a lot of judgments are summary judgments, which means the judge makes a decision, you don't get to go to a jury. When you do a summary judgment, the standard generally is no justiciable issue as to law and fact, and you look at the light in favor of the defendant. Okay, so I went and read it. It's a 35-page opinion. I even asked the judge to be a friend of mine on LinkedIn. And then I came across this clause, which, by the way, the defense used quite often in the overvaluation statement. Accordingly, estimates presented, they are not necessarily the amount that can be realized. He put a disclaimer in which is problem number one, because this is a issue of law and fact. Problem number two, nobody was injured in this case. The plaintiff was basically the district attorney of New York. As they pointed out, all the creditors have been paid. In other words, he's making payments on all his mortgages, et cetera, et cetera. So he has a disclaimer in there that says, look, this is my thoughts of what these properties are valued. They may or may not be true. Do your own research. Problem number one. Problem number two in the complaint, nobody was injured. And this is happening quite often around the country. The government picks up a claim and says, now I'm going to be the plaintiff. And I'm seeing it in my practice right now. There's nobody injured, and the government picks up the claim and says, we're going to become the plaintiff. And so when you look at both of these, the summary judgment, meaning they took it away from the jury, and you look at the politicizing, it's all Democrats, there is no Republican. And then you look at the standard, which on summary judgment should be pretty high. No issue law and fact, and there are issues law and fact, that this can only be a political decision and more cannon fodder for the Trump team. And I'm sitting there going, it'll probably be reversed on appeal. Much ado about nothing. But I encourage people to read the decision, 35 pages. You have to hunt for it because you got to go through all the newspaper articles and then finally come across it's 35 pages. Look at page 12 and 13 and you'll go like, what's this big fraud complaint all about? It's like Jatovy, if he goes, well, Jatovy's doing a business. I value my business at $3 million. Great, that's your valuation on your building and your business, et cetera. I do my valuation, it's not, but in your disclaimer, you say, do your own homework. And,
Nick,
you know, there's just no case here. It's just kind of a waste of time. Go on.
Jatovy, go
Change
first.
my mind, as Jameed says. Change my mind.
Oh, I was just gonna bring up echo, but I was just gonna bring up the fact that one of I didn't get a chance to read the actual case or the opinion piece broke down. However, on all the analyses that I've seen, they talked about how, yes, it was brought into the civil more so than taking it to a court because, yes, the court would look for that ideal, hey, there is a victim in this. However, due to the fact that there is no victim that you can say, hey, conceptually, I see this person injured, that's why I did it the civil way, because it's easier to actually show that, yes, he overvalued and then undervalued. So even though I may value for tax purposes it at 5,000, but then for selling purposes, I say I overvalue it. And
Jatovy,
isn't that where the legal part is, though, the overvalue and undervalue?
Yeah, I'd like to hear Lee's about that.
I kind of Jatovy, theoretically, who would be the injured party?
It doesn't matter about the injured party, though. The injured party isn't the issue. The fact
when you do a business transaction, there's two sides. I'm selling my used car. I think it's worth $10 million. You can pay me whatever you want.
But is it illegal to overvalue? The same thing with price gouging. Is it illegal to price gouge?
We're talking over here illiquid assets where you have two parties who are agreeing to a price for collateral.
Hey, Jatovy,
is it illegal to overvalue for? Is it illegal to overvalue for purposes of tax? Tax dodging and tax stuff.
That's not what we're talking about. I hear your point. We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
But if you overvalue it and then undervalue it for tax purposes.
Here's the reality, and I've only been practicing law for like almost 40 years in May. Okay, the reality of wealthy people, not just Donald Trump, all of them, they overvalue their properties, Jatovy. In other words, I have a house next door going for sale. They're asking like $750,000. If they get it, great. My valuation doesn't show that. They show that. But if you talk to wealthy people, when they sell, they always overvalue. Now, when they go see the tax man, they undervalue. They go, oh, this property's worthless. They all do that. So what you're saying, if that is a civil offense, then you're probably going to have to arrest all the people in New York and put them in jail or fine every one of them. Because
not just New York.
It's not an uncommon practice. And so Donald Trump was going, what's going on here? And I'm sitting there going like, wow, what's going on here? And he did have the disclaimer in there. The minute you put that disclaimer in there, go do your own research.
Nick,
It's
my
not
other
the
point,
same
Nick,
judgment. So,
is the
so
banks,
Dawn,
they're big boys.
Pardon?
They could do their homework and they can say, you know, Mr. Trump, we disagree with you.
We disagree with you. And in this case, unfortunately, no lenders were hurt. In other words, there's no injured party. So if there is no injured party and the state picks up a case, then it can only be political. And I think you just gave Fox News and Donald Trump a huge hammer by issuing opinions like this. If you just left it alone, if they left this guy alone years ago, he'd have just died off because no one would look at him.
I disagree with that.
They're basically, once again, the media and the Democratic Party are doing all they can to elect Donald Trump. So he'll be the next
I mean, I disagree with that because we have to cover. It has to be covered because one, he is a presidential candidate, and him doing his bad stuff is part of news.
Why did Letitia Thomas pick up a case when there was talk to me, other than political?
So let's talk real quickly about
the district attorney. Why'd you pick it up?
The DA who went after him
filed the complaint purportedly for $250 million. Why'd you do it?
Because there are 4 indictments, and in this case here.
Yeah, I know, but in this particular case, why did you file a lawsuit when there's no injured party? Talk to me.
Well, that's if somebody, for example, if somebody breaks the law, is there always an injured party?
No, there isn't. You can break the law and there's no injured party, and you can break.
So
the
then
law
why not
and there's
take
an
the
injured
case?
party and there's no recourse. They used to call it damnum ascum injuria.
But hold on,
without a remedy. So you know,
you just asked me. You just asked me if there's no injured party, why did she take the case? I just asked you, if you break the law, is there always an injured party? You said no. So if she considers this to be a breaking the law, then why shouldn't she take the case?
Because if she takes this case, she needs to take cases against possibly almost half the population of the city.
What if she actually had evidence, I mean, concrete evidence to show this man broke the law?
Well, what she does, she actually does. She shows that there's actually a statute in New York, and you'll go see it in the opinion. I encourage everybody to read the opinion, be a high information. There's a statute in New York that basically says that you can't, misrepresent things to other people. Okay. Now here becomes the case, because the thing is, it has not been decided. If you represent things that you believe are true, and you put a statement that if you don't believe my values are true, do your own research, then has any law been broken? Possibly not. Possibly, but possibly not. But that should be a decision of the jury. Instead, the judge took it upon himself to be the arbitrator of the law and the facts without ever giving the jury the right to do this, when the standard on a summary judgment, no judiciable issues to law or fact, and you have to look at the light most favorable to the defendant. The light most favorable to the defendant, he walks. I would look at, and I'm going,
So
I can't convict this guy of a violation when he has a clause in there.
But counselor,
this is my valuation.
Counselor,
and you don't believe it, like and I buy and sell real estate all the time. I just sold another piece of property, and I had my valuation. If you said no, it should be less than that, you violated the law. And the state jumps in and sues me. They don't realize I actually got my price.
Now,
the thing is, what is the state's business in this thing to begin with?
Counselor, you just stated that.
I'm not sure if he has.
But counselor, hold on. You stated that one, there is a statute you cannot misrepresent what you have. And then if you break that, then on top of that, the actual the complaint from the Attorney General is that he inflated his value to $2 billion to obtain other millions of dollars in loans. So therefore, if he inflated it to steal this other money in loans,
you're not stealing money when you're borrowing money. I'm sorry. And see, this was another misrepresentation.
But he hasn't paid it back.
Okay, this is a misrepresentation by the attorney she made on national TV. She should be indicted. Okay, she goes, it's not the art of the deal, it's the art of the steal. Now, wait a minute. Stealing means he took money from somebody and didn't pay it back. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. So why don't we indict her? Talk to me. She just
Well, hold
misrepresented
on.
things.
We just agreed that she has concrete evidence that he broke the law. Then on top of that, if he hasn't paid back the loan, then he is stealing.
In her opinion. Okay.
But-
see, that's the real problem. He may not have violated any law because of disclaimer statute, and they relied on it heavily. So you know what the judge did? They sanctioned the attorneys. I'm going like, why are you sanctioning the attorney when they actually have a valid, cogent argument because of the disclaimer that was put in there? And if you read the opinion, which is an opinion of one judge, he goes, worthless clause. No, wait a minute. Come on, judge. It's a disclaimer. Everybody knows in law you have disclaimers. They're done quite often. So every time I read through this, all I see is politics, politics, politics. I want the meat. If you're going to take a guy like this,
But
you've got to have the smoking gun in the guy's hand. You can't have the smoking gun 500 miles away. And say,
We have the smoking
hey,
gun. If he broke the statute by inflating by $2 billion to receive millions of dollars in loans, which he has yet to pay back or has not paid back. I'm still failing to see where.
Okay, because the thing is, you're making a statement that he broke the law, which is up to the jury to decide that fact. And I see it be an issue that you have to bring in front of the jury. It's not clear that he actually violated the law because people value their properties, especially wealthy people too.
But hold on, he drops the value for tax purposes.
They overvalue all the time. No, they overvalue not for tax purposes. It hurts them. For tax purposes,
That's what I'm saying. No.
Okay?
They have the fact
undervalue.
that
They overvalue so they can get people to buy their properties.
I get that.
at the dollar.
But what I'm saying is he
In
overvalued
your opinion.
to get the $2 billion, the millions of dollars in loans.
In your
He
opinion.
undervalued for tax purposes. That's why they're saying that he
Every day.
overvalued his properties by $2 billion.
Every day.
So
By
I mean,
the way,
if-
every day. Every day. Because the thing is, because real estate and hard to value assets, and I have to deal with them all the time.
do you overvalue by $2 billion?
When you go to sell, okay, you always value high, all right, and then there's a negotiation period, and you end up with the fair market value.
By
When you
$2
go to see the
billion.
tax man, you value low. There's no piece of real estate in America that doesn't have high-low valuations. There's no business in America that doesn't have high-low valuations, or the stock market wouldn't fluctuate the way it does. How can one stock be worth 30% more one day and then 30% less the next day?
So we agree that yes, there's fluctuation. But are there times with that fluctuation that is out of the ordinary, that is not regular, and that in that same fluctuation?
Well, technically in the stock market, the fair market value is and it's on any piece of real estate. It's when
Nick.
willing buyer and willing seller willing to change.
And Toby, you guys ever walked into a car dealer?
Yeah, I've walked
Yep.
into car dealers before.
Look at the price that they put on the cars.
The sticker price.
The sticker price, exactly.
Oh, and
Yeah.
do you know what? What some people actually pay over sticker price
Based
for
on
reasons
demand.
that's a market. So
Yep.
his valuation. By the way, his valuation of Mar-a-Lago.
But again, we're talking about a price jump.
But it's
of
like
$2
hard work. It's hard
billion.
work. It's what the willing buyer and willing seller pay.
But again,
he values
No,
the
no, no.
Mar-a-Lago at 1.5
But again,
billion. I would
what
pay
I'm
1.5
saying,
billion. But that
and
doesn't
even
mean
if
that
you take
somebody
your
wouldn't.
used car analogy, Lee, if you take your used car analogy and say the car itself is at $3,000, somebody pays $4,000 for that car, right? But they do a tax value on that car, and that tax value is that $3,000. What they're stating that he did is he took, and they're not taking loans out on these cars. And even if they do take loans out on these cars, they're paying it back. What they're stating that Trump did is that he took his price value of that same used car, jacked it up for selling purposes or to get loan purposes. That's what they're stating. Jacked it
Loan
up.
purposes where you had a party on the other side who did their own valuation.
Exactly.
Let me finish. Jacked it up to $25,000 to get loans for $25,000, got the loan for that $25,000. When he was taxed on it, he was taxed at $3,000 and never paid back the loan. That's what they're saying that he did.
Well, welcome to the United States of America, my friend.
But again, now we're talking about
United States.
we're
Every
now real estate developers for 40 bloody. I get that, but what I'm saying is,
There's nothing
but
unusual
what I'm
here
saying, Nick,
except
what I am
except we
saying-
have a Democratic DA and we have a Democratic judge.
What I'm
That's nothing
stating
unusual here.
did
It
not
isn't political.
back.
It's a waste of
He is
time.
not paying those. So he gets the $100 million not paying. If you're not paying what somebody gave you, is that not paying?
Pardon?
Toby, no one's complaining they didn't get paid.
All the payments. Hey, look, he's making all the payments. Now the thing is, if he wasn't making payments, he was default. Okay, then you had the valuation, and they relied on detrimental reliance. Then the person who is losing money has a case against them because they have standing.
Because there are multiple allegations. There are multiple allegations and so much proof out there.
Nick, explain to Toby how this happens all the time when people don't pay their mortgages and the banks come after properties. What's the value of the property?
Right.
What all loans did he get? Was it just a bank loan?
Yeah, he's paying all his loans. I mean, and
He's not paying all his loans. There are plenty of cases.
Okay, so this is really much ado about nothing. It looks to be completely politicized. Unfortunately, Trump is right. They're weaponizing the judicial system, and unfortunately, because if he states his case to the American public, I think he's going to win the election based on what is going on, the hanky-panky with the judicial system. So they really need to cut this out, and unfortunately, he's not the only one. They do it all the time to individuals,
Trump
They need
have
to, this is what America is not creating lawsuits.
Nick, $287 million of Trump's loans were forgiven. So he did not pay them back.
Were those PPP loans?
No.
So guys, let me get. Can you? I don't know why there's an echo.
Yeah, go on.
It's Nick's computer. In
Okay,
there.
well, real quickly, who do you? Let's get back to the debate. Who walked away as the winner? Do you think anything changed?
Nothing changed, but I think it was between Nikki Haley, and I watched most of the debate, and Vivek Ramaswamy as it was one. I mean, there were some people that I think got totally, and this is just my opinion, I don't know if Toby agrees with me, I think that they got totally, and I just used the word because I'm in that kind of mood, they got totally screwed because it looked like the moderators were totally ignoring Tim Scott, and he even made a comment about that at one point or another as well. So I think that they skipped over him, got a couple of digs in and all along those lines, but I think that they totally kind of skipped him over and were almost a non-entity in that space.
Mark, was the debate last night relevant anyways? Does it change the calculus in terms of Trump?
Does not change the calculus. Trump is going to be the leader. I think that actually one of the funniest moments, and they all kind of dodged the question, and it was totally at the end, where they borrowed literally from the kind of celebrity TV that Trump is part of and everything, and they asked who was going to get voted off the island, and nobody wanted to take that question. They actually kind of tried to dodge it. I mean, I think one of them tried to say that he would like Donald, I think that was Chris Christie, to be voted off the island and everything, but everybody else dodged it because they were asking which one of the people on the DS or which one of the people that were participating should get voted off the island and everything. But they were afraid to tackle that because of that base that Jacoby oftentimes talks about and all along those lines. I don't think any of them gained any ground and everything. As a matter of fact, I would not be surprised if a few of them, and maybe some that might surprise people, don't leave the campaign trail before the next debate. And I did not realize that there was a third debate until after I watched the second debate, but there is a third one that is coming on. But I don't think that it changed the narrative whatsoever. I think we're heading to a Donald versus Joe Biden trial. And I mean, not trial, but a continuation of the last campaign and everything along those lines. And to Nick's point, and I heard what Nick was saying earlier, the politicization of the court system is not a one-sided, one-size-fits-all kind of things. I think that both parties are doing that. I think that that's part of the reason that the whole Hunter Biden thing is going on. I think that that's part of the reason of what's going on with Donald Trump and everything else. And they're even trying to use it to attack each other. If you heard some of the attack, even though I think that Nikki might have done better as a debater, one of the things that she was doing with Vivek Ramaswamy was pointing out that he had the same deals with China that Hunter Biden had and everything. So she was actually making the case that he is just as guilty as Hunter is, and all along those lines. So that was one of her talking points, for lack of a better sense, and everything along those ways. And I mean, there were some funny lines. Chris Christie calling Donald Trump Donald Duck, and even the fact that Vivek Ramaswamy said that we can build a wall all we want to. The Mexican cartel is building tunnels underneath that wall and everything. So she said, it said basically that they can drive their people right through it, even if we put up this great wall and everything. So a lot of them were talking about this law and order message, and that was a lot of the message of all of the candidates was law and order.
I mean, DeSantis clearly, scored some points with, saying that he was not going to fund Ukraine at all, no blank checks to Ukraine. And so I think that was a good point that he made. I think Chris Christie won't make the next cut. He just hasn't. I think you're looking at DeSantis, Nikki Haley, maybe, and Pence, maybe Ramaswamy. But I think at the end of the day, it's still Trump's race to lose. I think it's going to be a rematch, Biden-Trump. Trump's in a statistical dead heat. So, this thing could, I think it's going to be close.
Steve, I got a question for you and Jacoby and even Lee, because it was actually something I saw in the Clubhouse and other places as well. There's all this talk, and I think there was another incident recently of the cognitive decline and the things that are going on with Biden. Like, I think he had another fall with what was going on with Air Force One and everything. But when I was looking online, there were some people that were feeling that even that's a double standard, because apparently Trump has mistaken George Bush for Jeb Bush, and he's also had some other kind of missteps in some things that he has said as well, but nobody is actually saying anything about those. We're so busy painting what Joe Biden is doing that we're not seeing some of the things that might be signs of his cognitive decline as well. So is that also a double standard that's going on? Because I'm seeing that was not the first incident of there being mistalks or even some stumblings that he has done as well, but there is very little coverage of that. But I did see that.
Who's that? McConnell? McConnell, you mean?
No, Trump.
Oh, that he's having.
So there was actually an ad that I think it might have been the Brady Project or one of the groups just recently put out that had Fox News, did the clips where Fox News was talking about Joe Biden and how decrepit he is and old and all this stuff, but they clipped in actually clips of Trump actually looking the same way. Right. So, there's going to be a double standard, and that's just the way that's the politicization of everything. For example, AOC went on Twitter to complain about how absolutely nobody on Fox talked about what Lauren Boebert did. Mm-hmm. And Lauren Boebert actually did something tremendously bad, but they complained about AOC dancing in high school and college, or AOC going to get a sandwich from somewhere, but they never complained about Lauren Boebert and what she did and why she got kicked out of Beetlejuice.
Jacoby, I happen to agree with you. What does anyone care about what someone did 20 years ago in high school, regardless of how horrible it may have been? Why does anyone care?
It's easy. It's the way they use these things to try.
It's so shallow.
Yeah, but that's the culture war. That's what people do to make others hate others. So, I mean, AOC is actually a fine individual. I mean,
I don't know. I can't comment. I just hear things coming out of her mouth that make me question her judgment, but I have nothing to say about a character. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying is that's what they're utilizing. They're utilizing these little bitty things, and so there's no reason to dislike AOC unless, you really hate her for, she said, no, her policies are her policies. You may not like them, you may like them, that's fine. But to hate her, MTG is a different story. Her actions and what she does and what she says and those things, yeah, I understand why people hate her, but that's not even covered. There was no coverage of her chasing down a kid who survived a mass shooting and hounding that kid and calling him an actor and stuff like that. That's evil. There was no coverage of that. But
Where was that?
That was after the which there were so many mass shootings. That was a couple of years ago, right before she came into office. She was trying to do this whole campaign thing and talk about mass shootings. That was right. What was that? 3 years ago, before she came into office.
And she accused the victim of just making it up.
Yeah, because he was going to Capitol Hill to testify about mass shootings and how we need more gun regulations. So she went after the kid who survived a mass shooting. That's utterly deplorable. So it's just, yeah, her actions are just disgusting. Lauren Boebert, what she did, but none of these things get covered. Because
Toby and Lee and Steve, just really quickly, do you think, because one of the things I did watch, like I said, quite a bit of the debate, not all of it, but do you think that this going after the big power play individuals is going to work in both the general election and what they're trying to do in the primary? Because I heard them giving a lot of lip service to going after the insurance business. I know that Nick's here, but he's backstage and everything. And Big Pharma and the NRA and all of these big agencies that are big donors and everything, they give it a lot of lip service. But I don't know, even if they're elected, even if they get appointed, which most of us think that that's where they're trying to campaign for vice president and everything, that they will actually do it. Because I've also heard them talking about eliminating entire departments like the Department of Education and all along this lines because of what their philosophies are. So I hear that to your point, Lee, that it's a good talking point. It sounds good, and yes, it might win you some votes, but are you really going to do it?
Most of them don't. And one example, and this I actually agree with DeSantis, when it comes to Trump, whether you like him or not, before the election in 2016, lock her up, lock her up. 2 weeks later, what happened? Nothing. He says, you know what? She suffered enough. Let's just forget the whole thing and, and tell her, go home.
But
what was that about?
Well, that's a talking point. That's a selling
Exactly.
point.
Either do it.
Well, the thing is, he knew he had no case, but he played on the people's upset and angst and anger.
I'm not sure if he knew he had no case or not. It's not to me. That's not my point. My point was, if that you believe you have the case, you're going to say it as a candidate, then act on it when in office.
But that's my point.
And if you lose, you lose.
But that's my point. Christopher,
you're saying he was disingenuous from the beginning.
Yes, because what was covered right before the election, they announced that there was a case against Hillary Clinton. But then even right before the election, they announced that there was no evidence and there was nothing against her.
Well, that's not actually true. The FBI director said there was, but no reasonable prosecutor would bring it. And a lot of people did disagree with him. So there was evidence.
No, there was no evidence to prosecute.
The FBI said there was evidence.
Lee, there was no evidence to make a coherent case against her to send her to jail.
That's not what Comey said. In fairness, I agree. I hear what you're saying. That's not what Comey said. He just said no reasonable prosecutor would bring it.
Why?
Political. I don't know why. He didn't say. He said she checked off all the boxes. She broke the law, he said. But no reasonable prosecutor would bring it.
Lee, that's what I'm trying to tell you. He did say it. He legitimately said that no prosecutor, no reasonable.
He didn't say no prosecutor. And a lot of prosecutors disagree with him. But it wasn't their call. It was his call. Mark, you remember this statement when he came out there, right? Why he opened up his mouth and he made that comment?
Don't remember the exact statement, but I'm not saying that it didn't happen. But I don't remember the exact statement. That's just me being honest and everything. But one of the things I'm curious about, and it even comes back to the debate, and I know we'll talk about some of this on the World Politics show as well at 5:00, is there is, and Jacoby kind of alluded to it earlier, there's this notion of the boogeyman. And right now we've got two boogeymen that are out there and all along those lines, and they play to both of them and all along those lines, because there's this notion that the Mexico border is unsecure, and therefore Mexicans and folks in the Latin American culture are part of the boogeyman. And then the other one that is out there now is because they are such an economic power that China is this horrible entity. And I'm not saying whether it is or isn't or all along those lines. But that being said, I'm almost guaranteeing you that in both of those cases, whoever is elected will be running probably right to China and right to Mexico, trying to negotiate with these folks that are supposed to be the boogeyman, but that plays really well to the masses, and particularly what I think Nick calls sometimes the low information voters, and all along those lines. But I mean, what are y'all's thoughts about this? Because every time I
Mark, just 1 second to follow up on Jacoby. I went to the statement by the FBI director. I just pulled out the paragraph. I'm sorry?
I look at the facts we gathered here. As I said, I see evidence of great carelessness, but I do not see evidence that is sufficient to establish that Secretary Clinton or those with whom she was corresponding both talked about classified information on email and knew when they did it, they were doing something that was against the law. So given that assessment of the facts, my understanding of the law, my conclusion was and remains, no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. No reasonable prosecutor would bring the second case in 100 years focused on gross negligence. And so I know that's been a source of some confusion for folks. That's just the way it is. I know the Department of Justice. I know no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. I know a lot of my former friends are out there saying they would. I wonder where they were the last 40 years, because I'd like to see the cases they brought on gross negligence. Nobody would, nobody did.
So Lee, again, that was put out. So you can say all you want to about, hey, there's evidence, there's evidence. He told you literally that no reason.
Why would he bring that up if there was no evidence? Why would he even be there?
Because Lee, again, because he's telling you there is no case to be had. Regardless how you feel, regardless how you want to argue, he just told you there's no case to be had. And this came out before the election.
You're right. And his full quote was, and I'll read it, although there is evidence of potential violation of statutes regarding handling classified information, our judgment is no reasonable prosecutor would reach such a case.
I just played it for you.
No.
What are you trying to do? Are you listening, or are you just wanting to argue?
Excuse me?
I'm asking you, are you listening, or are you wanting to just argue? Because I just played it for you. Then you overstepped and said, hey, this is his quote. I literally just played it for you.
You played me one of his quotes. He spoke to Congress, which is over there.
I literally just played you his quote, Lee.
You played me one of them. The FBI put out a statement. I put a link in the chat, Mark. And I don't know why Jacoby wants to say that this link does not exist from the FBI statement.
Lee, I literally played you his quote in front of Congress.
Yes, and his quote was, no reasonable prosecutor would be in the case.
So now what are you trying to do in this discussion that we're having?
You're denying that there's any evidence whatsoever.
Lee, he just told you there's no...
You're cherry-picking the whole statement.
Cherry-picking. I played you his
Mark,
quote.
we can go on because we're going to disagree on this one.
The problem, this is where the problem...
Let the viewer Google it and see.
Lee, this is where the problem's coming into play. And this is, so you have a distaste and a disdain for Hillary Clinton. You wanted her to go to jail.
This has nothing to do with that.
Listen, just please listen to me. You have a distaste and a disdain for Hillary Clinton. You're wanting to argue that there was a case. There's no reasonable prosecutor would take it. The FBI says it. I played you what Comey says. Nobody would take it. But you are stuck on that there is a case.
Okay, Jacoby, I hear what you're saying. Well, hold on for a second. One second. Mark?
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Mark. I put a link in the chat box, www.fbi.gov. Did I make that up, that link? On that link, there's a paragraph that I posted. Just read the first 3 lines, Mark. Did I make that up? Or did I take it from the FBI website?
Did I say
no,
you
Jacoby,
made it?
I'm asking Mark a question. I'm asking Mark
I
a
can try to
question.
pull it up and see it, but I mean, I'm imagining that that the FBI probably did make that statement and everything along those lines. I mean, it was a statement by the FBI director on the investigation during his press release in 2016. I mean, a lot of this is historical stuff along those lines.
Even in the statement, it says no reason.
It's dated July 5th, 2016.
Even in your statement that you're trying to hold on to, it even echoes what I just played. No reasonable prosecutor. You are trying to say that some prosecutor out there will come up and make some case because, oh no, it's political. The FBI says no reasonable prosecutor. Comey said it in front of Congress. You have to accept the fact that there is no case there. There's
And even
nothing.
if there was, I mean, it comes down to what you and Nick were talking about earlier, and I was listening, even though the computer and me were having both issues and all along those lines. But that being said, and all along that kind of space,
And
that comes down to that politicalization stuff that goes on,
exactly,
whether it's around Trump or whether it's around Hillary or whether it's around a number of others. I mean, we can even go back to like the FBI investigation of MLK and Martin Luther King and those that were involved in the civil rights, as well as even like the Seminole Liberation Army and a number of other kind of organizations in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. I mean, we can go on down. I mean, there is a major person that is literally sitting in jail because part of what he did was politicized and everything along those lines. Actually, two of them, because I'm thinking about
and
the
that
guy.
is my point
Thinking about
exactly.
the guy from Move, and I'm also thinking who I think is still in jail. And no matter what we think of Move in Philadelphia, or the guy that was a member of AIM and he's sitting in jail, I think he's dealing with a lot of other health issues and all along those lines. So FBI has been politicizing for
And that
decades. Go all the way back to like the 30s and the
and that's
80s.
my point. My point exactly is that Trump knew there was nothing, there was no case. Comey said it multiple times. The FBI put it out there, no reasonable prosecutor. There is no case. But he sold it because people hate Hillary. People hate the Clintons. So a way he rode in on that is lock her up. He knew there was no case and he knew he couldn't do it. Once he got into office and he knew there was no case because he was told that multiple times. Just
Nick,
like
now you sure?
even now, what is Trump saying? Trump is utilizing this was stolen. This is what he's got those 4 indictments for. This was stolen. This is stolen. This is stolen. This is stolen. That's all he's doing is playing on people's anger and people's fears and riding that high. So that's what happens. That you make boogeyman out of people, and then you ride the politicization of that individual. That's all that's going on there.
Yeah. Quick question and switching the conversation just really quickly, just and coming back to the debate, and I know we're talking about this in world politics as well. It seems like twice, and this is somebody that's been in the media, that the moderators have totally lost control. I don't think they have any control in that. This thing with the 3 moderators this time, including the young lady from Univision and everything. But that's just my opinion. Do you think that the moderators have any kind of control over that debate? Because this seems like for first half, they were just talking over each other, and we're not really having a true conversation and all along those lines. And we do that sometimes here as well. But what were your thoughts around this whole notion of the moderators and how they handle it?
Well, see, I think at the last show that we did with David Walker, everybody was good and they stayed in their lane, so we didn't have any problems with people talking over each other. It is a moderator control, but also here's the other thing: it's like Vivek Ramaswamy comes from a culture that if you don't interrupt, you don't get heard. Okay, and because if you're in India, there's 5 billion people. If you don't stick out, you're just not going to get heard. So he interrupts all the time. It's nature of the beast. Scott comes from a Southern culture with you interrupt, that's rude. So he doesn't interrupt, but then he doesn't get heard. And so what you do is you have, and the moderators are out to lunch. They're low information people, period. If they were good moderators, they would make sure everybody had their time to talk, but they're not, Mark. So because of that, and the leading person in the poll, by beating them all combined, didn't show up, I didn't bother to show up either, because you're just, why would you want to listen? Although in my personal opinion, you've got the best candidates there. Nikki Haley, I think, is probably the best candidate, but she's not going to get nominated. I thought Mike Pence did a great job at the last one. He got no traction. Christie keeps bashing Trump and goes nowhere. And DeSantis is just a mini Trump.
Nick.
So what you have is basically a waste of time. Give Trump the nomination and let's move on.
Should they be moderating the airtime to make sure no one monopolizes it?
Well, the thing is, there's a way that you can moderate, and we know how to do it too. So go ahead and interrupt me now, Lee, and see what happens. Go ahead, try to interrupt me. Lee, say something. Interrupt me, please. Oh, the mute button, it works, doesn't it? Okay. So the thing is, the moderator, we have a mute button. Now you're unmuted. Okay, you muted yourself, goof. Okay, so the thing is, on television, you have a mute button. If the moderators were good, which they're not, they're Fox moderators, they would go, Tim Scott, it's yours. In other words, give him his fair time, and they did. And then mute everybody else. Why didn't they do that? Because they're not, this is Fox Entertainment. It's not Fox News. It's not a debate. It's not even close to debate. It is just a bunch of, it's a food fight, as we'd say on our Pod TV network. But if you did it properly, if you had a proper debate, you'd give each person equal time and you would have issues. We want to hear your opinion relating to abortion.
Hey, Nick, I'm gonna actually take a little bit of opposite view of what you just said, because when I watched the debate, and like I said, I did watch quite a bit of it and everything. When I watched the debate, the one that seemed to do the best because she had a focused designation of what she wanted to talk about, and all on those lines that she was representing a part of our society. And I don't know if Jacoby saw this debate or has the same opinion, but I actually felt that the Univision moderator did a better job in terms of actually getting her points across and actually getting heard in what she was addressing. She was bringing it to the forefront of who her audience is, which is the Latin American audience. So whether it was around this, whether it was around the migration situation, or whether it was whatever, I feel that she did a better job of getting the message heard.
Mark, who are you talking about? The moderator?
Yes.
Okay, no, the moderator is not in a position to get her or his opinion heard. Okay, see, that's totally wrong. I totally disagree. The moderator's there for one thing, is to ask questions. And this is the problem with the media and her problem. She's trying to push her media agenda, whether it's Latin American or whatever the heck it is. That's not the job of the moderator. The job of the moderator is to listen to their opinion. If she was doing it, I didn't see her yesterday. That's horrible. That's what I'm saying. This is not a debate. If you want to see good debate skills, go to the NFL, the National Forensic League. It used to exist, it may exist today, in high schools. Then they have professional debates, and they're moderated professional. High school kids are better than the people that we're seeing on the Republican Party. It's really very sad. So no, I didn't watch this one. I watched the last one. I watched a couple of them. I'm going, this is a food fight. This is entertainment. It's not a debate. You know, hit the mute button, then you got a debate, and go from one candidate to the next, and not one candidate. Oh, he addressed me. I get to respond. You get to respond during your time. You don't get to respond just because somebody attacked you. You get to respond when your time comes up. So it is the most unprofessional piece of garbage I've ever seen. And if you ever did debate in high school, which I did, you know, I was in the Forensic League, you would say this is just garbage. And if you practice law, it's beyond garbage. You know, so although lawyers do tend to interrupt each other.
But isn't that, I'm just thinking, isn't that what they want right now? And that's the sad part.
Yeah, that's true. They want ratings, Jacoby, and having a food fight and people yelling at each other and talking over each other gets more ratings than if you did a proper percentage debate where you have your say. And that's the reason I like Dave Walker's show, although I never had to hit the mute button. Everybody had their say and they moved from one to the next without having to people talk over each other. Although we do that in World Edition, we do have the power of the mute button, and you know that, Mark. So you know, what can I tell you? Why watch garbage? You know. Don't.
Well, I think it's just going to be interesting. Guys, I'm hearing such an echo. I can't hear myself.
I'm going to mute myself.
Like I said, just mute yourself in your computer.
Well, I think moving forward, it's just going to be a really interesting election. I mean, I think that if Trump is the nominee, it's really going to come down to turnout. And if, you know, young voters are going to come out if Biden is the nominee, you know, what if this thing is so close that eventually it ends up in a statistical tie? And then would it go to the U.S. Congress? Who knows? I mean, you know, I think that it's going to be, like I said, I'm really concerned about the state of politics today in America. It's really gotten to an all-time low. And, you know, I think it's really concerning that we're this divided, that we can't even agree on a government funding program. I mean, I'm supposed to go to Washington on Saturday, and I'm thinking about canceling my trip because I've heard that there's going to be a lot of protests. There's a festival going on. 300,000 people are going to be there. And I was going to go to the Indian ambassador's house for a reception, the foreign minister. And I don't even know if it's the best time to go to that, something like that, because I think that people are really concerned about the Canadian assassination and everything. So I might just try to, you know, but anyway, the point is, it's just, I think we're 24 hours away from I don't remember the last time we've had a shutdown. I mean, even on this show, we kind of poo-poo it
Steve?
off. Yeah.
Are shutdowns even meaningful? Because they don't shut down basic things that services that need to be funded or whatever. And anything that is shut down, everyone gets retroactive pay anyways.
Not
So
really,
what
though.
relevance is it?
I think the government employees will be furloughed. They won't get paid. That's what I found out. So
That
whether
would be
you
the
work-
first time, would it not? They always get back pay. If I'm
I
not
don't
mistaken,
know.
they've always gotten back pay.
I don't know, but I know Congressman Nickel, who he's actually said that he would actually sacrifice his own salary if his own staff. We might bring Congressman Nickel on next
Steve,
week.
why
as a
isn't
guest.
that a requirement during a government
Yeah.
shutdown that they don't
I
get
know.
paid?
I don't know. That's and Congressman Nickel made that point. Well, by the way, Mark, he would like to come on the show, so I think we're going to reach out to him because he's right now up there in Washington, Problem Solver Caucus, trying to hold this off. But you know,
The tough part about saying that, getting back pay. What if you're living paycheck to paycheck?
That's a valid point. I get it. I
And
get
then
that
you're
point.
not gonna
That
pay
is
your
a valid
bills.
point.
So government shutdown's bad. I mean, that's a lot of people that aren't going to get paid, even though we can say they get retroactive. Then on top of that, if they can't pay their bills, that means somebody else can't pay their bills.
Yeah, you know, Jacoby, David Walker made a statement that it is complete waste to do that because they all get paid back. So if there's nothing beneficial economically for us or the country, what is this all about? Grandstanding. That's it. All it is
Incorrect.
It's grandstanding.
It's
They're-
grandstanding to hold up the actual funding of the government. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Well,
But in terms of we have to get off the idea that, hey, they're going to get back. We may be sitting in a situation where we can handle that. That's okay. But again, there are individuals out there on that federal dime that aren't going to get paid that are living paycheck to paycheck. That means that person could be kicked out of their home. That means that person is now homeless or now in a. I mean, there are just going to be so many problems. We have to stop thinking, oh well, it's okay if somebody doesn't get paid; they're going to get it back later. We got to get out of that.
I agree. It's complete negative energy and waste of time. It's like Tuberville, who's throwing a tantrum right now, not allowing people to get into positions that they need to get into. So, you know, if you want to cut the government budget, which I do agree with, this is not the way to do it.
I agree.
So the thing is, there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, and we can get them on this show later on. I know I'll have the fur fly when I'm an advocate of not having the federal government fund child care. Okay, that's going to have the fur fly. But then I don't want to have the federal government funding internet service to people in Albuquerque.
and let's not forget that
Okay.
the Senate
I'm not gonna shut the
agreed.
government down, you know?
I can't hear him. There's too much of an echo.
Okay, go on.
The Senate agreed on a $37 billion plan to fund the government until November. It's the House. They can't agree to this, right?
It's because of that wing of the Republican Party right now is so extreme. And then on top of that, our partisanship. The Republican Party only wants to do a Republican Party budget. They don't want to work with the Democrats because, again, McCarthy already knows that if he tries to work with the Democrats, because he gave up so much power and begged and everything else, as soon as he does any type of compromise, he's losing his job. So truthfully, right now, it is up to McCarthy to decide if he wants to figure out a actual bipartisan deal or if he wants to keep his job. That's it.
Hold on a second. Speaking of keeping your jobs and everything, hey Nick, one of the things that really resonated with me, I didn't know your thoughts around this, was one of the people that got the least traction actually was talking what you just said, because he brought up the fact that he had actually balanced his budget, that he had actually done a lot of great things, given he's in a very small state and everything. But it seems to me that that's actually what Governor Burgum was saying, was that he had done a lot of the things that you think would be good things to do, but he didn't get any traction for that. So what's going on with that? Because definitely he's doing what we saying we want to have happen. Because one
It's
thing
really
he said
sad.
was,
Mark, the best people in the Republican Party are up there right now, and they're suitable candidates. Burgum is one of them. I like Burgum. I like Nikki Haley. I mean, you've got several of them that I would say, yes, I'll vote for them. I like them. But here's the unfortunate thing about them: they're getting no traction in the polls, and the way the debate is mishandled, they're not getting their message across. But you're right. But you have some really good people in the United States. They just don't happen to be Biden and Trump. And you have some really good people in the Republican Party. It just doesn't happen to be Trump. Unfortunately, as I say, people, it's not what I think, it's what they think. And unfortunately, Mark, the people out there are voting for Trump, and they should be looking at Burgum and Haley. I agree with you, but they're not. They're going like, Donald Trump, you should be our,
Nick, in fairness, then shouldn't Burgum and Haley say why they're better than Trump? Shouldn't they have done that last night?
Yeah. If they stop the food fight mentality, yes.
Well, they won't.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just the problem is, guys. I can barely hear. There's just such a bad echo. I haven't been able to hear myself most of the show, so I apologize. I don't know whether it's me or not.
It's not just you.
No, there's a
Yeah.
feedback with the Nick. I'm gonna figure out a way to get. It might be muting the. No, it wouldn't be muting that. I'll figure it out.
By the way, I mean, I have not been able to hear myself the entire show. There's like 4 echoes going on, so I apologize. But anyway, I'm going to just go ahead and close out because it's been hard to hear today. I've really been hard to hear any of you this whole morning for the whole hour. So I apologize for that. But as we close out, we're going to continue our discussion at 5 on world politics. And I'll be there for a few minutes. I've got a retirement reception for our town manager. We'll continue our discussion tomorrow live from PBS Carolina, where I'll be there to begin the new season of Black Issues Forum, talking about the government shutdown, Medicaid expansion, the North Carolina budget, and the presidential primary, most likely, in the Republican side, and the 2024 election. And also, we might talk about Mike Morgan's entrance in the governor's race in North Carolina and what that means if a Black man is running in the primary. Would be interested to get Mark Lee and Jatovi's perspective on that. Although I do think his entrance to the raid was a bit late, and will he be able to raise enough money to compete with Stein? But I want to thank you all for being with us today. It's going to be an interesting 2024. So thank you all so much. God bless you. And this evening at 5 o'clock, the World Edition for the show won't be on long, but I'll be back for both episodes. From our family to yours, be safe. Thank you.
Take care, Steve. See you guys later.
Yeah, take it easy. Get ready to get on out of here. And yes, I do think Mike Morgan has a shot and all along those lines, just to answer Steve's question. But he's definitely got to do some serious campaigning and all along those lines. But there's a lot of people that are not the biggest fans. I know Nick I know Steve is a fan of him, but I do know that there are a lot of people that are not fans of Stein. So it'll be interesting to see whether he can play to that base and everything.
Mark, I just want to make one comment about this budget and the shutdown. In private business, they would never go with these games and stuff like that. You don't try to submit a budget as December 31st as you're walking out the door, taking New Year's drinks in your hands. They knew this a year ago. They're going to have to do a budget.
No, but hold on a second. Private business does do something notorious that is similar in some ways. Because I don't know if you are aware of this, but if a lot of because I understand the statistics, a lot of people are, and part of it is to a part of your career, meaning accounting and trying to balance your sheets and everything. But a lot of the layoffs actually take place at one of the worst times of the year for that layoff to take off, because a lot of layoffs happen around Christmas and Thanksgiving because they are trying to balance the budget and do with the whole, not the fiscal New Year, because that's around my birthday, July 1st, but around the calendar New Year. So a lot of times people are laid off during that time. And
which is extremely insensitive, I think, in my opinion.
But just to point out, I mean, even if you take the notion that businesses don't do that, this, again, the shutdown is a political tool, and that's what it's being used for right now. That's all it is. Because honestly, it's easier to complain when you're not in power and than it is.
And
to
both sides do that, whether it's immigration, whatever.
But hold on. However, if you notice that in the last Congress or last House, when the Democrats were running it, lots of bills got passed and there was no shutdown. There was a lot of complaining from the GOP how they would run things. They got in power, haven't really passed. They passed a handful, literally a handful of bills And at this time, there were, multiple bills in the Congress prior, and they've only passed a handful of bills. Plus, they're about to go onto a shutdown because they can't even agree within themselves how extreme they want to go. And just to point out, in terms of the shutdown, because we didn't touch on what gets shut down. We only talked about, federal employees don't get paid. Well, Social Security and Medicare, it says more than 10,000 Medicare applicants were temporarily turned away. So that happened the last shutdown, and that was in 95, 96. Environmental and food inspection goes away. National parks are shut down. So now you can't go to the park and actually go for a stroll. Air travel was strained because, you got air traffic controllers, which are also part of the federal government, which are going to get paid, but it's in a high stress environment. So how many people will not show up for work for air traffic? So now you're putting a bigger strain on air traffic. Now you're looking at Health and Human Services, where NIH, new patients. So you got a lot of stuff that it affects. We just can't say that shutting down.
Can we agree there's something wrong with the system that during a shutdown, air traffic controllers don't get paid, but congressmen do?
Oh, I agree with that.
Okay.
No, that's definitely agree. And
That's an easy thing.
That's an easy agree, and along those same lines. And I saw that Sasha popped in earlier and all that space. Hopefully, we had the World Politics show, but they also can't agree on what they want to do with Ukraine either, because you've got some folks that want to, within the government, that want to not do the blank check, and then there are others that are willing to put out as much money as they can. So that's going to be a whole nother conversation that probably
60 Minutes came out with something interesting, what we're funding in Ukraine, and I think most people don't understand what's going on over there, the extent of what we're funding their government, their retirement benefits, whatever it is.
That goes back to our political talk. I mean, it's how we talk about what the issue is. Like, there's a reason we need to fund Ukraine. And
we're not just funding the war effort. We're funding their government.
I mean, they're in the middle of a war being,
and therefore what?
We need to help them. And there's
we
a
need
reason
to help ourselves also.
I mean, that was part of the conversation they were having in the debate. And like I said, we'll probably bring that up in world politics as well. Part of the question was because I think it might have been Vivek that brought it up, whether it is a loan or not a loan. Because if it's a loan, then they have to pay it back. If it's not a loan, then we're not worried about.
Yeah, one of the large. That's where, what is it? How much grain do we get from Ukraine? Isn't that the world headquarters for it?
Yeah.
So therefore, if we're going to help them rebuild, do you think that we have negotiating power in terms of getting a better deal on grain?
I think that if we're giving money for a war effort, we should have a say in what we're giving money towards, whether pension benefits and another thing to civil servants.
I'm sure that there's more to the actual deal in terms of giving Ukraine money than just.
And that's just what people want. They want transparency. What are we doing?
But the problem is people, yes, they want transparency, sure. But the problem isn't that they want transparency. The problem is that they're believing the talking point that we're giving it a blank check. That's
some people maybe have that understanding. I understand. I get you.
On stage at the Republican debate, what was it said? What were they saying? We need to stop giving a blank check. They know it's not a blank check.
So then the other people on stage should say, "Excuse me, there is no blank check. We're giving money. It's all being appropriated. It's being voted on."
Do you want those same votes? If you're on stage and you see that person right there gets a big cheer for saying that, you know what? I want those votes too. I'm going to say the same thing. You know what the Republican Party believes right now is that it's a blank check. Those that listen to the Republican Party without looking up stuff to understand.
Mark, this is probably my problem, that I have some association and a relationship with the truth, regardless of what cheers it's going to get from the crowd.
Well, I mean, that might be why you're not winning the presidency right now and everything along those lines, because there are a lot of people that are not as much a fan of transparency and all along those lines. And I get it. You're an accountant, and I definitely am a.
If you're not transparent 99% of the time, you got something to hide.
No, I can definitely agree with that and everything. But a lot of people are also afraid of transparency because they are afraid also on the end of the some people are having a hard time dealing with facts and all along those lines, and that's just my opinion around our
You can
voters.
ignore
Everything-
facts all you want, but you cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring facts. You can ignore physics, okay, but you can't ignore gravity. It's going to hit you on the head.
But the problem is when Trump came in, he created a new term by Kellyanne Conway, alternative facts.
Yep.
And that's what people go by. it's all, it's an easy way to say, I like to believe what I like to believe.
There are no alternative facts. Just as there's no such thing as my truth. There's the truth.
Exactly.
Yep, definitely. I agree. There's the truth, and even sometimes the fact can hit us hard in the head and everything. Is one of the things I was going to play, but I'm not going to play it now. Maybe I'll play it at World Politics. Was a very poignant speech that was given none other than Martin Luther King, where he was talking about the way that we, and you can look it up on LinkedIn because I posted it on LinkedIn and everything, but the way that we treated folks in terms of the European peasants and the African peasants, because that's really what slaves were and everything. And he was definitely saying that the African folks of African descent did not get the land and the benefits that the European folks did, and all along those lines. And this was after the March on Washington speech. And a lot of people were saying that this is a message that they wish would resonate more with the public and everything. It was another speech that he made late in life and all in that line. But like I said, check it out on LinkedIn, and I may also post it on the World Politics at some point as well. But it was a very poignant speech where he was answering an interviewer's question. And on that note, we're ready to get on out of here. We got
See you guys later. Have a great day.
The Empowering You show coming up at noon and all along those lines.